Okay, so today's class is just going to cover what you need to know for Unit 10, which is pretty much, I'm just going to be covering the 20th Century Poetic Revolution tutorial, because the modern novel one, the lesson activity, you need to do totally on your own, and then I'll go over the Unit 10 activity, and that'll be that. I really happen to like this particular subject. Modernist poetry is my favorite. Um, and that's basically what this lesson activity whole thing was about. So we're going to talk about some poems, and then you're going to answer some questions, and then all of these poems actually relate to what the unit activity is about. So I'm actually just going to go to that, and I'll come back and forth. The first question is about the poem A Bird in the House by Elizabeth Jennings. So how does the speaker's attitude towards death change? Support your answer. 1 second. Okay. So A Bird in the House by Elizabeth Jennings. Let's get a little more. Okay. It was a yellow voice, a high, shrill treble in the nursery, white always and high, I remember it so. White cupboard, off-white table, mugs, dolls' faces, and I was 4 or 5. The garden could have been miles away. We were taken down to the green asparagus beds, the cut lawn, and the smell of it comes each summer after rain when white returns. Our bird, a canary called Peter, sang behind bars. The black and white cat curled and snoozed by the fire, and danger was far away. Far away for us. Safety was life, and only now do I know that white walls and lit leaves knocking windows are a good prison, but always you have to escape. Fly off from love, not felt as love. But our bird died in his yellow feathers. The quick cat caught him, tore him through the bars when we were out, and I do not remember tears or sadness. I only remember the ritual. The warm yellow feathers we put in a cardboard egg. What a sense of fitness. How far, I know now. Ritual goes back, egg to egg, birth to burial, and we went down the garden softly, 2 in a small procession, and the high clouds bent down, the sky pulled aside its blue curtains. Death was there or else where the wise cat had hidden. That day we buried our bird with a sense of fitness, not knowing death would be hard later, dark, without form or purpose. After my first true grief, I wept, was sad, was dark, but today, clear of terror and agony, the yellow bird sings in my mind, and I say that the child is callous but wise, knows the purpose of play. And the grief of 10 years ago right. I walk down the garden carrying death in an egg and the sky singing, the trees still waving farewell, when dying was nothing to know. Okay. So basically, she didn't really have a whole lot of feelings initially when the bird died, but as an adult, she felt a lot more of the grief, and she felt grief for that grief, and we can see that where she says, not knowing death would be hard later, dark without form or purpose. After my first true grief, I wept, was sad, was dark, but today. She understands that grief now. So that is how it changes. Okay. Okay, part B, and in and O, The Man That I Might Cease to Be by D.H. Lawrence. What is the emotional state of the speaker? Okay. No, now I wish the sunshine would stop, and the white shining houses and the gay red flowers on the balconies and the bluish mountains beyond would be crushed out between 2 valves of darkness. The darkness falling, the darkness rising, with muffled sound obliterating everything. I wish that whatever props up the walls of light would fall, and darkness would come hurling heavily down, and would be thick black dark forever. Not sleep, which is gray with dreams, nor death, which quivers with birth, but heavy, sealing darkness, silence, all immovable. What is sleep? It goes over me like a shadow over a hill, but it does not alter me nor help me. And death would ache still, I am sure. It would be lambent, uneasy. I wish it I wish it would be completely dark everywhere, inside me and out, heavily dark utterly. Whew. Uh, this is a dark one. This is basically somebody who is depressed and is just really um, tired of living. Just everything about life is very exhausting. Um, and it's just really a poem about um, just being supremely depressed. Even death would still hurt, he says, and even death would still ache, I am sure. So, not even death could bring an end to this sadness. I just want darkness and silence and nothing. Um, yeah, that's real dark. Okay. Uh, yeah. Okay. Part C. Does Yeats' poem, An Irish Airman Foresees His Death, seem to be traditional or modernist? To you, explain your opinion with reference to the poem. So I'm going to give you kind of like both ideas after we read it. Okay. Just real fast, the unnamed narrator in this poem is Major Robert Gregory, who died in World War I. He was the son of Lady Augusta Gregory, one of Yeats' greatest supporters. She had a tremendous influence on Yeats' life and writings. Okay, to see my dirty clothes. I didn't realize that was there. Okay. I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere among the clouds above. Those that I fight, I do not hate. Those that I guard, I do not love. My country is Kiltartan Cross. My countrymen Kiltartans poor. No likely end could bring them loss or leave them happier than before. Nor law nor duty bade me fight, nor public men nor cheering crowds. A lonely impulse of delight drove to this tumult in the clouds. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seem wasted of breath, a waste of breath the years behind in balance with this life, this death. Okay, so if you think it's more traditional than modernist, it's pretty straightforward about what he's saying. There's not like a whole lot of room for interpretation in this poem. It is clearly about war, dying in war, like what it takes to enter a war, all of that. It's definitely got a rhyme scheme and rhythm, which isn't really part of modernism, and it's not unusual in its visual imagery. If you want to think of it more as a modernist poem and fitting some of the ideas of modernism, it's sort of this here that brings it into the modernist realm because it's not like a normal reason that somebody would have gone to the war. He just wanted to be like alone. And so that's why he went off to war. And so sort of like he doesn't really have the motivation that most young men that went into war did. Yeah, that's sort of that bit of information. Okay, then let's see. I don't know if this little one that's in here, if I need to go to the actual lesson. Nope. Okay, let's get here. Okay, so reread the poem Nothing to Save by D.H. Lawrence. Why would the poem be considered an imagist work? Explain your answer. If you remember from the tutorial, when it brought up imagism, it brought up the poem by Ezra Pound called In a Station at the Metro. A very short poem. It's, I don't get the impression I'm going to find it immediately, but let's see if I can get through, because it is, oh, here we go. In a station of the metro, the apparition of faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bow. So this is imagism. It's just basically like being very concise, but giving images into what you're doing, and it's meant to convey a certain feeling. So if we look at this, nothing to save. There is nothing to save, now all is lost, but a tiny core of stillness in the heart, like the eye of a violet. So you can see what the eye or the middle of the violet looks like because of the way that he wrote this. So Why would it be considered an Imagist work? Well, it creates an image, it uses short, concise language, it's straight to the point. Those are reasons it could be considered an Imagist work. Okay. The last two questions deal with one of my favorite poems of all time. I'm going to put it up on the screen. I'm going to turn my video off, but I'm going to read it out of my book because there might be some notes that I pull out of here. This is a book that I used when I was in university getting my degree in English, and it's a collection of poems by T.S. Eliot. He's one of my favorite poets. Okay, so let me pull up the poem. I'll give you like this information at the beginning. This is a reference to Dante's Inferno, which is the Divine Comedy, and it's basically a story about like all the different layers of hell. And so it's just like there's a little translation here about what this says, but it's originally in Italian. So what it says is, if I thought that my reply would be to someone who would ever return the earth, this flame would remain without further movement. But as no one has ever returned alive from this gulf, what I hear is true. I can answer you with no fear of infamy. Okay. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in the drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. And indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you, and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions, before the taking of a toast and tea. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And indeed, there will be time to wonder, do I dare, and do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair, with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They will say, how his hair is growing thin. My morning coat, my collar mounted firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. They will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. For I have known them all already, known them all. Sorry, I got lost. Have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voices dying with the dying fall beneath the music from a farther room. So how should I presume? Okay, we're going to pause here. Just for a second, just to kind of talk about kind of what's going on. So we're introduced to this man. We assume that he is J. Alfred Prufrock, and he is going out. He's not really excited about it because he's an awkward person. He's going to this party, and there's this fog about London. It's like London is famous for fog, and so we're kind of getting this imagery here. This is one of my favorite pieces of imagery in all time, are these lines right here. Fun fact, it's a well-known fact that T.S. Eliot loved cats, and so this is actually like a description that he's doing of the fog curling around in this London street like a cat. And so he's just basically like, do I dare go to this party, they're just going to comment on how unattractive I am. I already know all these people. I know what this is going to be about. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. Just like the the meaning of my life is just, it's small. Like I haven't done anything significant. A coffee spoon can measure out the important things that I've done. So he's afraid that he's just not an interesting enough person. Um, okay. Interesting. I have a slightly different version here. Mine says, oh, here we huh. So I'm just like really confused here. Okay, here we go. Found it. And I have known the eyes already, known them all, the eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase. And when I am formulated, sprawling on a pin, and when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways? And how should I presume? And I have known the arms already, known them all, arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight downed with light brown hair. Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so digress? Arms that line along a table or wrap about a shawl, and should I then presume, and how should I begin? Shall I say, I have gone at dusk through narrow streets, and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt sleeves leaning out of windows? I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. So that he's saying like I am the lowest. He is a creature that shouldn't be seen and should just crawl on the bottom of the ocean. And the afternoon, the evening sleeps so peacefully, smoothed by long fingers, asleep, tired, or it malingers, stretched on the floor here beside you and me. Should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis? But though I have wept and fasted, wept and prayed, though I have seen my head, grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I am no prophet, and here's no great matter. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. So as we have the note here, this is an allusion to the death of John the Baptist. Um, uh, she requests the head of John the Baptist, and that's the whole thing. So it's just an allusion to that. Okay. And it would have been worth it all, after the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me. Would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile, to have squeezed the universe into a ball, to roll it towards some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all, I shall tell you all. If one, setting a pillow by her head, should say, that is not what I meant at all, that is not it, at all. And would it have been worth it, after all? Would it have been worthwhile? After the sunsets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor, and this, and so much more? It is impossible to say just what I mean, but as if a magic lantern threw the nerves and patterns on a screen, would it have been worthwhile? If one, setting a pillow or throwing off a shawl and turning toward the window, should say, that is not it at all, that is not what I meant, at all. No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. Am an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two, advise the prince, no doubt, an easy tool, deferential, glad to be of use, politic, cautious, and meticulous, full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse, at times, indeed, almost ridiculous, almost, at times, the fool. Here he is again just talking about like how negative he views himself. I come off as this like person who maybe is like well to do, but I'm an obtuse person. Like I don't get things. I can be ridiculous. I'm foolish. I grow old, I grow old. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I have heard the mermaids singing, each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back when the wind blows the water white and black. We have lingered in the chambers of the sea by sea girls wreathed with seaweed red and brown till human voices wake us and we drown. All right. So if we're looking at the question, so if we look at it structurally, there isn't a set structure to it. It's kind of like here we have like these stanzas. None of them are necessarily the same length. Structurally, the poem is all over the place, and so is our narrator. And that's how it relates to the content of the poem. Okay, so we're looking at the tone here in my favorite imagery ever of this cat here. And so the tone, it's kind of like sadness. It's darkness. It's not like really a positive view. It's reflective. It's realistic, talking about this fog. It's more like smog at this point. So you get this tone of just sort of like I don't know, the idea of the fog being yellow. It lingers and stands, it's just slipping around. It's supposed to create that idea of melancholy. And then the word choices form poetic devices. So there's a lot of imagery in here. And then if you want to go deeper and sort of think about symbolism and fog is usually like foggy brain, confusion, things like that going on. So yeah, that is the Poetic Revolution tutorial, which leads to the activity. So I have links to some of these poems. I guess it's all of the ones that we went over. So there you go. These will link directly to the poem in one form or another, so you have it. You're going to answer these questions. Which poem did you choose? Why? How did you depict the poem visually? Why did you do it this way? What did you learn? Do you understand the connection between art and writing? That's something that comes up in that last tutorial. So basically, you're just going to make some sort of visualization. I've had one person draw, and that was awesome. I've gotten a lot of collages of images. I just don't want a slideshow. I want like one thing. If beyond what's on the sheet here, you want to do that, let me know and I'll give you the okay. But that's the activity. It's really not too hard. It's just taking the literal imagery that's being used in the poem and trying to make that into a visualization. All right, and so I'm just going to talk to you about this one because we can't do it together because it requires you to do stream of consciousness. So you're going to do free writing, and I really, really, really want you to try to do it for the full 10 minutes. Set a timer. If you can't think of anything, write about how you can't think of anything, and then why can't you think of anything? And just keep trying to, push yourself into writing these ideas down, and just try and go. Think you could write about how much you hate doing it, whatever. Just try the stream of consciousness, and then you're just going to continue to answer all of the questions. Yeah, that's basically what you're doing. It's a good activity to try because it's sort of like a brain exercise. But that's it for 12B quarter 1. Hopefully you found this useful, and enjoy.